Alright, so here is the entire unit, as you can see here. It's actually several separate pieces. You have your door locks, your window and window lock right here. This is one big switch, and then you have your power mirrors, which is right here. This is one switch. So you have three separate switches. There's actually two wiring harnesses for the windows. I'm assuming that this wire harness goes to the window locks and this one is for the windows themselves, but I'm not going to know until I get it all apart. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the power mirrors. I'm going to start with this switch right here and get inside of it and see what we've got. In order to get it out, it looks pretty simple. There's these two, it looks like retaining stops right here. Should be real easy to get this out. Okay, so I've released two of these and the rest of it should just pop right out. Just, you know, be careful at this point. If you need to, you can always wedge your flat blade screwdriver or whatever else you have in on the other side here, and just to make sure that you don't break anything. But should be able to just take this right out just like that, and you can use your fingers. There we go. Alright, so we've detached this switch and this is what it looks like. It's pretty simple. You know, it's got a 3-position toggle, 1, 2, 3, and then you've got your 4-point dial here to move your mirrors up, you know, up, down, left, right. So now we need to get into this switch, and I can see right here it's got these 4 indentation clips right here, these tabs. That looks like that's all that's holding it together. So this should be pretty easy to get into. You can see that I went ahead and got this open, real easy to do. I just took my flat blade and wedged it underneath and just pulled out, and came right out. So there's the cover. This is the switch itself. Looks pretty simple. So this is what we're looking at here. Yep. There's two tiny incandescent bulbs right there. One of them lights up the directional, and the other one lights up the left and right 3-way selector. So what we're actually going to have to do is, it looks to me, there's two, looks like, okay, looks to me they've got 2 solder points, obviously, and it looks like it's going to be rather easy to get to those 2 solder points right there. And I have a feeling it looks like the bulb is one complete housing. So this right here, this bulb, this whole thing is going to just come right out. And it looks familiar because I actually replaced my HVAC bulbs, and these look to be identical to those. So shouldn't be that difficult to get these bulbs out. Yeah, should be real easy to get the bulbs out. I'm not worried about saving this this outer harness here. I don't need it. I really don't. And it looks like Actually, I might be able to get this whole thing out without even... You can see here the whole thing is coming out as one piece. Yep, there we go. That's pretty interesting, actually. The whole thing didn't even need to solder. Wow. Okay, so there's the bulb right there. This is burnt out. Although it looks really clean, I'm surprised it is burnt out. I can see where it's broke at the contact. So, but that's the bulb right there. That's how small it is. It's a little tiny thing, and that actually came out really easy. All I did was, there's two prongs on the end here. I know it's probably hard to see, but there's two prongs on both sides here. I actually just took my fingernail and moved those outward on both sides, and then I just pushed up on the bulb. As you can see here, it gets loose, just pops right out. There's two bits of solder on each side, and this is what the bulb then looks like, and this is burnt out. So it looks like all they did was they set this bulb on top, applied a bead of solder on each side, and then called it a day, which is fine. That works just fine. But I'm probably going to add more solder to this. So this is going to be real easy to get to. My only problem is going to be fitting a resistor underneath here. So the bulb sticks out right here. I might have to put the resistor on this side and then run the bulb underneath. I'm probably going to have to do that. And it looks like there might be some trimming involved, but we'll have to see. Okay, so in basically taking the last 20 minutes to figure out how I'm going to fit not only the LED but the resistor underneath here, what I've determined is that it's going to be basically impossible to try to fit the resistor on the underside here. Okay, the resistor is just not going to fit. No matter how I try to wedge it in here, the unfortunate thing is that if I put it under here like this on the contact side, you can see here the problem that it's going to come up with. Okay, this is going to prevent the normal operation of the actual contacts. Now there's a solution to that, which is a long process, but basically cutting out each one of these and then gluing them to the actual switch, but I'm not going to do that. That's just ridiculous. So basically the LED is going to come down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out these 2 points right here. This is where the incandescent bulb actually sits, right here. I'll show you. The bulb actually comes down like that and pokes out through the top there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a hole right where that's sticking out, just wide enough so that the LED can come through, and it'll essentially stick out the top. Imagine that it's sticking out the top right there, just like that. So the LED is going to stick out the top. Now I'm also going to have to modify this portion slightly, because this LED here is a wide angle LED. Now as you can see here, the LED gets stopped, and initially this looks like, oh, that's great, it fits perfect. The problem is that a lot of the light is actually going to be blocked by this rim, this inner rim here. So I'm only going to be getting the light coming out the top, and I would much rather have all the light from this LED illuminating this switch here. So what I'm going to do is, real simply, I'm just going to take a drill bit. I'm just going to drill a hole that's slightly larger than here, so that I can take this LED and slide it all the way in, so that it comes up to, probably it's going to come up to about right there. and because it's wide angle, it's going to be sitting right there in the middle, and it's going to illuminate much better the inside of this switch. So the mirror selector is actually going to be much easier because there's a lot more room in here to work with, and they use this reflective kind of clear plastic, and as you can see here, there's actually a little tiny, you can't see it on camera probably, there's a little tiny spring on the inside of this clicking switch. All it is there's a plastic piece that's rubbing up against this right here, and each time you click it, the spring compresses and allows the little kind of point on the end here to come out of place momentarily, and that's what gives you your click sound, and also holds the switch in place so it's not loose while you're trying to change your mirrors. But I've got a lot more room to work with here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this LED, I'm going to bring it down here, and then I'm actually going to bend it so that all the light is being projected down into this this area here, and that should light this up really, really well. But again, the LEDs aren't actually the problem. It's these big resistors here that I have to, fit. So unfortunately, this is going to require some modification. The resistor has to go on this side of the board. Okay, there's no doubt about that. It's going to have to go on this side of the board. And I do have room on this side of the board to be able to do that. However, there is a problem with that, even still. Let's get this turned around here. As you can see, this circuit board is flush with this piece here, so there's no way that I could get a resistor in here and still have this fully functional without having this basically just to hang here. Okay, so what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to cut out of this right here, I'm going to have to cut out a rectangle that will essentially allow this to sit right there. Basically what's going to happen is the resistor is going to be sitting under here just like this, and when I put this housing back on, it's just going to have an opening so that this resistor can pop out a little bit. No big deal. It's just something that I'm going to have to do simply because there's just not very much room under here to be able to do this. I'm going to have to do this with two different resistors, so there's going to be one right here, and then there's going to be one right here. You'll see how it looks when I have the finished product. That's how I've determined that I'm going to have to do this. And it's not really what I want to do, but it's just something that I'm going to have to do, unfortunately. So this is going to have to be modified. I'll take some electrical tape. Obviously, I'm not going to leave it fully exposed just in case, but I'll take some electrical tape and I'll just run it over the top so that it'll protect it from the elements. But so this thing is going to require a little bit of modification. Unfortunately, that's just the way that it is. It's not going to be that much. I'm just going to make an opening just big enough so that this resistor here can stick out a little bit. So that's essentially how I'm going to have to do that. Okay, so the very first step in the modification process is to cut out a slightly larger hole for the directional switch so that I can take this LED and move it in more. As you can see here, that's as far as it'll go because the outer rim of the LED is actually preventing it from going any further. So rather than modify the LED, I'm just going to modify the opening so that I can actually get this LED down more. And what I'm using is a 1564 drill bit, which is slightly larger than that hole. And I'm just going to take my time and just really easily just drill down until the hole is big enough to where I can fit this LED in there. Alright, so what I've done here is I've modified this point right here. Here's the other one that I haven't cut yet. This is essentially where the bulb sits. And what I did was I just cut this piece off using a box cutter blade, and I just just cut the side of it. And that right there allows me to get these two positive and negative points through this red contact plate. And it's pretty simple. Now both of these are coming up and out, so the LED is inside this switch now. And even further, now it allows me to get the LED through here. So the LED is now fully accessible on the back side of this circuit board, and my my resistor is going to sit right there, okay? And the positive portion of the LED is here. It's the longest leg. It's usually the longest leg in an LED is the positive portion, and then there's the negative. And the resistor is going to sit right there. It's going to come from the positive point on the circuit board, which is here. This is the solder that I'm going to use. I'm actually going to add a little solder, but the resistor is going to run from here. It's going to rest right here, and then I'm going to bend this point to connect right there to the positive end of the LED. And it should essentially work just fine. I mean, I'm not anticipating any problems. And then I'll be doing the same thing with the bottom side. The resistor is going to sit right there. The 2 points are going to stick out. This is positive illumination, this is negative illumination, and I'm going to take the resistor point right here, bring it around, have the resistor sit right here, then take this end of the resistor and wrap it around to the LED. And I'll show you what it looks like when it's all done. It's going to take a lot of moving around and getting it just right, but you know, these are the results that I want, so it's going to take, you know, some love and labor to be able to get it just right. So I'm also on the safe side. You want to be adding a piece of electrical tape down here, just a small piece, just to make sure that there's no chance that this can somehow you know, connect to any one of these other points here. I'm just going to be on the safe side. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and finish the modification to this red piece here, because I need to remove this one right here. And again, be careful. You can see where I cut out the illumination point here. Make sure you don't cut out the wrong one, because you've got a lot here. Make sure you just cut out the one in the middle, and as you can see here, the other bulb goes right there. So essentially, I'm just going to take my box cutter. Be careful you don't cut yourself. I don't want that to happen. So essentially, I'm just going to take my box cutter and cut across, and it should come right out. See there? So this again would allow 2 points. Essentially, the LED is going to be sitting on this side here. This allows me to get access to the 2 points on the LED. So if you're wondering how I found positive and negative on here, I looked at the wiring harness, and General Motors usually, at least in this time, 2008, they usually had a gray wire for positive illumination, 12 volts, and a black wire for negative illumination, 12 volts. So all I did was I just looked at the wiring harness where this plugs in. The black wire goes to this point here, and the gray wire goes to this point right here. And as you can see here, I know it's probably a little difficult to tell on camera, but this is where the gray wire is. That connects to this point where this letter E is, and that runs directly to the positive on the incandescent bulb that's right here. And then you can see the black wire would connect right here, and that runs directly to this negative solder point right there. And all they did to get to the other side is they just used these right here. Actually, the positive illumination, you can see right here, there's a point right here where it comes down behind the circuit board, jumps up, connects to this point right here, comes up and over, and you can see where it hits positive there. So just some simple tracing is how I found that left is positive, right is negative. And that's usually the case. That's the way my HVAC bulbs were when I replaced all those. Left was positive, right is negative, but you always want to make sure. You don't want to get the whole thing together and find out that you got it wrong. And positive on an LED is almost always going to be the longest leg. So you want to make sure you don't trim these down and then you're like, oh no, I forgot which is positive and negative. You want to make sure that you know for sure which is positive and negative. So it's usually the longest leg is the positive, and then you got the negative. And then the resistor would go on the positive leg because the DC current that's coming in is only going to go in one direction. So you want to make sure that before the electricity hits this LED, it's actually going through this resistor. So you want the resistor to be connected to the positive end. And then the other end of the resistor would go to the positive point right there. So the electricity flows through, hits this resistor first, then hits this LED, and then goes to the negative terminal. The LED can connect directly to the negative side of the illumination. So you don't need a resistor on the other side as well. So that's basically how I figured that out. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and get the LEDs in, situated, and then I'm going to start cutting, trimming, soldering, getting everything together, and I'll show you what it looks like along the way. Okay, so as I mentioned before, the light from that goes into this LED right here, this switch, I mean, actually you could probably maybe see, I don't know if you can see that well, but the light actually comes down. It comes down into this point right here. There's this clear plastic piece that sort of refracts the light around and allows it to illuminate this switch here. And the little itty bitty bulb that was right here actually illuminated this. The problem is a lot of this light was blocked by the various plastic that's there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my LED and I'm going to bend it, and I'll show you how that I'm going to do that. And I'm going to bend it so that most of the light is going to shine down inside this little, I guess, crevice here is what you could call it. Essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my positive and negative is right, because I don't want to bend this and then find out it's wrong. But so the positive, let's find the positive is on this side of the board. So the longest leg would have to be on the left right here. So I'm going to bend very carefully. I'm going to bend this LED, real easy to do, just real carefully bend this LED so that when it's sitting, you can see here how I'm going to have to have it work. When it's sitting, I'm going to have to bend it a little bit more than that, actually. Alright, so now when this LED is down and it's sitting, it's going to sit just like that. So you can see here, even though this is a wide angle LED, most of the light actually comes out the top, most of it. And the wide LED, what they do is they flatten out the top here, and it causes the light to kind of disperse a little bit. But still, most of the light is going to be coming out the top. So what I essentially did here is I'm going to be sitting this down inside this portion right here. You got to make sure that the switch is still usable, so it's not interfered in any way. And most of the light is going to be shot down into this point right here, so it's really going to make these bright. And that should really light it up. And any light that doesn't, or that actually goes out the sides here, is going to be kind of refracted inside here, and it should still, most of the light come out. It's going to be a lot brighter than that little incandescent bulb, that's for sure. Okay, you can see here where I've made my negative connection here on this circuit, and you can see how I've bent the LED on the other side so that it actually slides right down into there, and the LED is facing this this little crevice here, so the light should go into that direction. very easily. And now what I need to do is I need to get the negative hooked up. I've got my resistor here all trimmed up, and essentially all I need to do is take this point here, bend it to the resistor, excuse me, the LED, and then bend this side to the solder point. I'm actually going to do the solder point first. That way I have more room to work with to get these both soldered in. So, alright, you can see here how I've connected this. This is the positive end. This here is the negative end, and I haven't soldered it yet. This point right here, this solder point right here, actually goes down to the negative of the LED, and this is the positive of the LED sticking out here. But before I make the final solder, I want to determine that I've made the right connection, obviously. So this point right here is positive illumination. This point here is negative illumination. I don't know how well it's going to come up on the camera, but if I touch these 2 points together, I'm basically just running a 9-volt current through this. If I touch these 2 points together, as you can see there, it lights up. I know it's probably hard to tell on the camera, but anyway, it lights up. So I know I've made the proper connection, so I'm ready to make the final solder point. Okay, I have completed the upper portion of this switch, and you can see, probably see, I don't know how well you can pick that up on the camera, but as you can see here, let's see if I can get something to point here with. Okay, on this side right here, this is the positive portion of the circuit board, and it comes out to this resistor, which then wraps around and connects to the positive point of the LED. Then the LED is underneath. The negative of the LED comes up and is soldered to that point right there. So it's a complete DC 12-volt circuit. And what you need to make sure is that none of this is touching any of the other parts, not only of the circuit board, but I also have to make sure that none of the points here are crossed. And I've got enough gap in here. I don't think this is going to move around. I have enough gap in here where the positive stays positive and the negative stays negative, so I'm not worried about it crossing or anything. So I've completed this side. Now I need to do the exact same thing with this side. So it's essentially identical to how I did that side. Okay, completed both of the resistors. Both circuits are complete, and I'll see if I can show you. I'll go ahead and turn this light off here. I'll show you. They both light up, as you can see there. So, connection complete. Circuit complete. Now, I need to turn my attention to modifying this black plastic backing, because as you can see, the resistor sticks out to the point where this won't go on. So a little modification is going to be necessary. Shouldn't be too bad getting this modified. Okay, so as you can see here, I've completed my modification to this back plate. All I basically did was take my Dremel, and I just kind of drilled out approximately where the resistors are at. And as you can see here, I'm gonna flip this around. As you can see, it comes down and snaps into place just fine. And so the resistors are exposed, and I checked to make sure that they weren't, the wires weren't touching any of the plastic, and it's not. So this should be ready to go. I'm going to add some electrical tape on the back end of this to make sure that just in case water happens to come in contact with this, that it's going to keep the water out, any dust out, anything else like that. But I have essentially finished, and as soon as I get it back in the car, I will be able to see just how bright it is. Also to note, since I put all the circuitry on the back side here, these buttons are not in any way impaired. They should function just like they should normally. Okay? So once again, if you're planning on taking on a project like this, make sure you know what you're doing. I mean, you have to do soldering. You know, I used a box cutter. You don't want to cut yourself. You don't want to burn yourself. You want to make sure that all your points are properly soldered. You want to make sure that none of the connections are in any way crossed. You know, there's always a chance you could start a fire. You know, things like that. I mean, anything could go wrong. I'm just saying worst case scenario. So, you know, I used the fireproof 1 waters. And that's to make sure that, you know, they're not going to heat up really hot and catch fire. And then I used wide angle red LEDs, which I got this pack of 100 LEDs for $5. $5 on Amazon Prime. These were a little more difficult to find. I actually had to go through a specialty shop to find the 620 ohms. There's plenty of half watt and quarter watt 620 ohms, but there's very few of the 1 waters, which is exactly what I wanted. The 1 watt is going to be bigger, but it's not going to heat up as much when you're putting current through it, and that's exactly what I wanted. I ended up paying, it was 50 cents per diode, or per resistor for these, and there's 10, so I ended up you know, paying $5, so it wasn't too bad of a price. But anyway, yeah, so when I go ahead and get this back in, I'll show you guys what it looks like, all lit up and all wonderful looking. So, alright, so hopefully that helps you replace your incandescent bulbs with LEDs rather than either throwing that away or dealing with anything burnout. One more thing I should note before you go ahead and get this all put back in is this is a great time to clean all this. There's dust and so on that gets into this switch here that you can't clean out because it's covered up underneath this housing. So this is a perfect time. You know, you can use some Armor All or whatever else you wanted to use. Just be real, you know, careful with it. Don't spray it all over this thing. Just, you know, onto a piece of tissue or something like that, and then just clean all the nooks and crannies in here and get it all nice and spiffy so that it looks good as new when you get it back in. Alright, as you can see here, the side mirror selector switch is working, the movement switch as well. A little disappointed in the selection, the left and right selection for which mirror you want to adjust, but this 4-way, the directional, is actually really bright, and I'm not really too critical about it. It was burnt out before anyway, so it's better than being burnt out. And as well, this is actually facing the driver, so I don't necessarily need it to be blinding, but I can definitely tell that this upper one is blocked by a lot of that plastic that I told you about earlier when you saw. But anyway, now everything works. I already tested it and it looks great, so that completes the installation. Changing over to red LEDs. If you have any questions, let me know. I know this video has been long, but like all my rest of the videos that I've changed my incandescent bulbs out, I've been really thorough and detailed so that you can try to get as much information as possible. So yeah, remember to do this at your own risk. There's always a chance that you could damage something or even cause a fire. So take care, guys.